just got done reviewing Avatar 2, The Way of the Water. Highly recommend you all go and watch that because it was just a cinematographic masterpiece. Really enjoyed all the work that came into it. And honestly, a 13-year period to wait for it was honestly worth it. I highly enjoyed the CGI. But we're going to transition into a series that we've been covering just about every month because new installments come very frequently. We're going to be talking about Indian Predator. And today, the new installment is titled Beasts of Bangalore. And we're following the story of Umesh Reddy. Now, Umesh Reddy was a felon in the years between 1996 and 2002 who went on a spree of raping and murdering women that were alone in their house. And he was arrested multiple times, but he would continue to escape or find a way to get released. But in 2002, he was finally caught and he received the death sentence. Now, I don't know exactly all the details that happened behind the curtains. I don't even know if this series knows exactly what was happening behind the curtains, but there was some sort of delay in his sentence. Like the higher courts upheld the decision. He wrote a petition to the president, which got denied, but somehow his life sentence, his death sentence, was reduced to only 30 years of prison. And in today's day, he's about 10 years away from being released. So in this installment, not only did they go back and look at all the acts, interview family members and everything, but they also talk about the injustice in the judicial systems within the higher courts in India. And how it essentially follows is Umesh Reddy would find women that were alone in their house. He would break in, and this should be followed with a trigger warning because I'm about to talk about acts of sexual violence, rape, and murder. But he does break into these houses, rapes the women inside, and then commits murder. So much so that the town and the village that this was happening in, people were installing barred fences in their yards. They were really arming their houses to be a lot more secure. It put a whole town kind of in shock. When he was finally captured, he somehow managed to get out of the death sentence into a 30-year sentence, as mentioned earlier. And in a lot of these testimonies from police officers, from families, everyone agrees that there was some sort of unjust treatment towards him and his sentencing. And what I really liked about this installment is I feel like in the previous, there were a lot of it was more a serial killer story. Like they're going to try and explain the psychology behind the serial killer. They're going to try and give you all the details so you can kind of ride along with the mystery. And this one, however, what really differs with this one is they do a deep dive on the judicial system and how this case was treated. And they also allude to what's going to happen in 10 years when Umesh Reddy is released and he is back on the streets. While he has been in prison for about 30 years, who knows what's going to happen whenever he gets released. And that's one thing about this installment that really sent chills, kind of up my arms, because not only is this a real person, as all the previous ones were, but this real person's about to enter the face of the public eye again whenever he's released. So I highly recommend Indian Predator because it's been one of my favorite, docu-series, like crime docu-series to watch, to follow. Every installment is just as great as the other. They also find a way to kind of tweak their craft and really get good at putting the docuseries. I mean, I remember following the first installment all the way to this one. They're getting better and better each time with their interviews, the kind of people that they're able to collect and, gain insight from, as well as explore some of the things that are wrong inside India's justice system. Em, do you have any other thoughts?
No, I think the entire true crime series, especially Indian Predator as a series, has been superlative, except, a couple of them where they stretched a little bit. But I know the one that you watched before this, you absolutely liked because that was hard hitting. It was realistic. The interviews were very, authentic. What did you think about the interviews here?
I think the interviews here were a lot more diverse than the ones before because here we had not only family members of the murdered victims, as always, but we also have, investigators, police officers who were there. We have people that can kind of look into the system that, gave him his 30-year sentencing. And what's interesting about this one is everyone's kind of confused as to how and why he got that sentencing, as to how and why it was upheld as well, and not, you know, changed to an even longer sentencing. I mean, to go from a death sentence to 30 years, not only have you saved your life, but you've also secured time in the outside world as well. Now, a lot has happened, you know, from 2002 to 2032. You know, we'll see that a lot has changed within India, but the ultimate theme that all these people were, you know, kind of alluding to is that they're scared of what's going to happen when he re-enters
The world.
society. So whether or not there's going to be another killing spree or not, we don't know. But that was kind of the scary thing about this one, is that, like I said, it's a real person who we might see again in the news.
So tell me something. You know, a couple of these Indian Predator, as such, a couple of these series took care of the psychological aspect of the killer.
Yep.
Did this episode also do the same?
It did not take as big of a deep dive into the psychology as the previous ones were, because the ultimate theme of this one was more so like, how are the systems in place in India affecting the victims, and is it the right treatment? Is it the justice that victims deserve? Because in the previous ones, it was pretty much a cut and close case. You had someone that was really messed up, they got sent to jail for life, and they're not going to re-enter society. So let's take the time to explore their psychology. Now, similarly, Reddy was similar to some of the, you know, serial killers we've seen in the past, where they have been serial rapists, they have been serial murderers. And so if you've been following the series, you kind of have an idea on what that psychology might be like. They do go into Reddy's background. They do talk about his upbringing a little bit, and they do talk about, you know, who he was at that time, but they don't take as big of a deep dive into psychology, which there's some good and bad things. I think good is they don't try and stretch out what he might be thinking. They don't try and over psychoanalyze his psyche, but at the same time, you know, it leaves room for them to kind of explore other themes, which I thought was great in this installment. I would highly recommend, but I do just want to, like I said earlier, want to put a trigger warning. It is, you know, it's a highly violent installment, talks about murder and sexual violence, so just a trigger warning before you dive into that. But that is it for today. We reviewed three great actually additions to, you know, film and cinema. We reviewed Govinda Nam Mera on Hulu, Avatar: Way of Water, which is currently in the movie theaters, which I believe is expected to hit about $500 million in the box office. If you go and look at your local, you know, movie theater, there's going to be probably 10 different showings at least at your movie theater. I know at the one I went to, there were like 20 to 30 different times you could go and watch the movie. Some of them playing multiple times in there. In fact, I think there were 4 or 5 movie theater rooms that were reserved just for Avatar that day. So highly recommend going and watching. You won't have any trouble finding a good time for you. And then the last one was Indian Predator: Beast of Bangalore on Netflix, which we just got done reviewing. Please leave us your thoughts and comments on our social media. We have Daisy's Livegram on Instagram, Daisy's Live on Twitter, and follow our website, Daisy's Live. Leave us a comment. We put these reviews up every week, and honestly, the reviews come up before our series comes out, so you can get a little sneak peek on what we're going to talk about and what our thoughts were, and we would love to hear from you guys as well. So give our socials a check, but until then, we are signing off. Have a good one.
And a happy new year to all of you who are listening to us live on radio today. And we shall be back next year with more such episodes, more reviews, views, and more goss. Tell us what you think, and we look forward to accompanying your journey.